All right, YouTube and Lions fans. This is, I'm not a Lions fan, but I'm not a Lions fan. I'm not a Lions fan. I'm not a Lions fan. I am not a Lions fan. But I do understand football, and I do like to see certain situations succeed. And the purpose of me making this channel is to give the perspective of why this team will be great and in the way this is considered not factual. And what I mean by that, statistically, but it would put a emphasis on, the greater outlook of optimism towards his franchise, towards the coaches, staff, towards the GM and upper management, towards the casual fan that's not so devoted emotionally, but yet and still they thrive and stride and they really are pressed to see a winner. So I'm going to start off by talking about Matt Patricia and why I think that he is the guy for the job. If we were to look at if we were to bring in facts and go through the coaches that were considered first year coaches that were successful, maybe they have been assistant coaches or coordinators or whatever, and then they received the position through the rankings or through recommendations, and they become like the head coach at a different team or whatnot, a different franchise. So I put Patricia in the category of Bill Walsh. I mean, not Bill. Excuse me, not Bill Walsh. George Seifert and Jimmy Johnson. He's like a combination of both. George Seifert, of course, if anybody familiar with the older late '80s and early and '90s, I think all the way up to not mid '90s, maybe to the late '90s. George Seifert was the head coach, and I think after that he went to Carolina. But anyway, he was an assistant up under Bill Walsh, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe he was. I won't say the quarterback coach, or he was an assistant. I know. I don't know how much if it was a coordinator or whatnot. But anyway, when Bill Walsh stepped down, I don't know if it was whoever was running the organization. It was Ed DeBarlo or whoever it was. They decided to, you know, elevate through the ranks. So they hired someone who was familiar, I guess, with how Bill Walsh had already had it set, and so they hired within that ranking. In most cases such as that, it's probably the best thing to do, particularly if you are a winning organization. You want to keep the train moving, so you hire within because they are most familiar to how it's basically ran. Particularly if you got like a veteran group. Now I start off with George Seifert because he was not Bill Walsh. At the same time, he was able, I believe, to get three titles, if I'm not sure, 88 and 89, and maybe it was 89, no, not 88, but maybe it was 89 and 94. I'm not sure. Maybe it was two titles instead of three. But anyway, he had a great supporting cast. I believe through the 89 season, I think he on defense, I think one of his star players, I think he had Ronnie Lott was still there. But on the offense, you got the juggernauts. You have Rice, Taylor, Brent Jones. I believe Roger Craig was still there. Tom Rathman. And the offensive line has been with them for quite some time. Jesse Sapolo, Steve Wallace. I'm missing someone. I don't want to say Guy McIntyre. I think he was there and then he left. But anyway, as you can see, I'm a 49ers guy. But anyway, I bring up George Seifert in comparison to Matt Patricia because Matt Patricia is coming from a previous tree or a winning organization. Now, Matt Patricia is not Bill Belichick. However, he have learned a lot from Bill Belichick, and Bill Belichick wasn't Bill Belichick because he was a disciple of Bill Parcells and so forth. He learned throughout, through his experiences of coaching. So Bill Belichick was a guy who went up in the ranks. He was basically, I almost want to say that he was every kind of coach you possibly can be, or coordinator you possibly can be. He done it all. Linebacker coach. I don't know if he was a defensive coordinator or whatnot, but I know when he was with Cleveland, he was a head coach. But he was I don't know if he was a linebacker coach from the Giants or he was a coordinator, and then he went to head coach in Cleveland. But anyway, why Patricia is going to succeed is because of this reason. Patricia is the man for Detroit. I looked at a lot of coaches that came here over the years, and they come with this huge sledgehammer. Like, we're going to tear down this wall that's been up here for like so many years, and we're going to go ahead and build this up, and we're going to be a winner because I say so. Patricia's the only guy that I see with the help of. He's the only guy that I see that came in with a package deal. And what I mean by that, he came in with the GM who not only came from where he came from, but also can see what he sees. And even if Patricia is missing it, he can cover his back or cover Patricia's back. So if you look at organization, how it's ran from top to bottom, you got one helping out the other. That makes a great organization. If anybody give all the credit to Bill Belichick, what he has done with New England, that is remotely ridiculous because there's no way he could have done that by himself. If Bill Belichick is the mastermind of the whole operation, he can't be in all 20-something places at once. So he has to implement and have to install those who are similar to him or can be similar to him. This is what made Tom Brady as good as he was, because he can see what Bill Belichick saw, and he can execute it on the field. If you look at the Lions organization, from the GM to the head coach, it's like when we had Matt Millen or we had Mayhew. Millen brought in, let's see, Morningwig, Rod Marinelli, Mariucci, and that was pretty much it, I believe. I think Marinelli was the last one. I think Mariucci came second, and then he was on his way out the door. But anyway, Morningwig and so forth. Morningwig was a coordinator up under San Francisco. And of course, Marinelli came from the tree of Tampa Bay, and Mariucci came from the 49ers as well. So he was trying to implement something that he wasn't on the same page with. Matt Millen was a player. He may have known a little something to sell himself to the force to get the position, but I don't know if he was much of a mastermind as much as a GM could be in terms of like putting those in position versus telling people what he wants. I want this, I want that, and that won't get it done. You have to, if you can't implement or show it to those who are on your staff how your vision is, then you better find someone who can adapt without words to your vision. Like if you just throw it on a board and they can just fill in the blanks. So what I think Patricia has, he has a package deal with Bob Quinn. And you hear a lot of talk about they should be fired and everything else. And I want to know how many fans really realize like how difficult it is to come from a coordinator to a head coach. Or then some people could try to compare it to, well, this guy did it, this guy's this, but you don't know what their situation is. The Lions situation as a franchise is not like any other franchise in the NFL. You may have some ones that are similar in terms of, we would say, losing or not being productive with from drafting to financial stability and so forth. And but look what Bob Quinn has done, and since he's been here, let's say with the regime of Patricia. Now, of course, we immediately go to the wins and losses, and we don't show it on the field. All right, okay. When Jimmy Johnson came to the Dallas Cowboys, I think he came after Tom Landry, if I'm not mistaken. Jerry Jones was, of course, the owner, and I think he had just bought the team. I'm not sure, maybe a couple years prior to. And Jimmy Johnson came in from Miami. He was hot. Miami Hurricanes was like basically the deal. They was one of the juggernauts in college football. So anyway, he came there and he had a drive in him. And I compare this drive to Patricia. Like it's a chip on the shoulder. As long as that chip is there, that's their motivation to get it going. All you have to do is get his type of guys. And when I say type of guys, or when other people may say type of guys, they immediately think of like, okay, if they played for him. Type of guys is guys who can see the vision. When Bill Belichick, I use that as an example, when Bill Belichick drafted Tom Brady in the sixth round, he probably didn't know. Maybe he did when he interviewed him that this guy can see what I see. He has the talent. He may not be the most mobile, maybe best arm strength. He may not be all that in contending towards the measurements and so forth. But what he has is the ability to implement what I can show him. If you can get a guy or guys that can perform what you're showing them as a leader, you're going to have a juggernaut. That's what Bill Walsh was able to do with the 49ers, and that's what Jimmy Johnson was able to do with the Cowboys. Now, George Seifert, he couldn't do it as much because he wasn't the architect. He was he was a finisher. And so his job was to basically keep keep the train or keep the process afloat until the wheels falls off. And as you can see, the veterans, the ones that was there from Bill Walsh on down, they start to age and they moved on to different teams. And anyway, the wheels fell off. But going back to Jimmy Johnson, as you can see, once he left, it fell off because it was built in his vision. All right, one of the first things that he did from my understanding, when he got into office, he said to Jerry Jones, I believe, I think I think he inherited Bill Herschel Walker, and so he said, "You're gonna have to get rid of this type of guy," because he saw himself running a certain type of tempo, offensively, defensively, special team, whatever. He saw like a mental thing that Herschel Walker didn't have that he was looking for. Look at the guys that Jimmy Johnson brought in. Look at the guys that Matt Patricia brought in. They're one of the same. And what I mean, Matt Patricia is not implementing. I'm sorry, he's not taking or trying to duplicate what Bill Belichick is doing, or even what Jimmy Johnson is doing. But what he is doing the same familiar winning blueprint. You get the type of guys that can see what you see, and they can implement that on the field. Take Harmon. Let's take this year's with the Lions free agency. You bring in Shelton. You bring in Jamie Collins. I'm going to miss somebody, I think. You're going to bring in Harmon. Let's start with those three. Okay. You have last year in free agency, you brought in Trey Flowers. Forgive me, Trey Flowers. When George Seifert took over the 49ers, he had let me see, a veteran leader in every position on defense and on offense, so that you can build on. Or you had someone who's about execution, who's about doing their job past their point of themselves, going past themselves. So Jimmy Johnson had to implement that to the Dallas Cowboys because he didn't have that when he came to that team. He didn't have a guy on every level on the defense and every level on the offense. So he had to find these anchors that you build off of. Okay, so this goes with me with what Bob Quinn and Patricia is doing now. And I'll give you maybe maybe five anchors, 4 to 5 anchors that's on this team that they're building the team around. One is not Matthew Stafford. They would say that. He is the icing on the cake. He is your John Elway. He is your Steve Young. He is your Troy Aikman. They're they're going to be the headliner because they got the position and so forth and da 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 da. But yet and still, they're not the anchors of the team. Okay, all right. Take you got, let's say they brought in Trey Flowers last year. That's an anchor. They brought in Tavai. That's an anchor. A couple years before, they brought in Kenny Galladay. That's an anchor. And I'm going to say in the back, they didn't have an anchor. It could have been Slay, but he, like going back to the point where we start off with, he couldn't implement on the field, or he couldn't demonstrate what the coach vision is on the field. It is either the IQ wasn't there or the fact he just didn't want to. So you replace that. So if you got Trey Flowers, you got Jelani Tavai, Kenny Galladay, and I'm missing somebody. And of course on offense you got Ragnow. All right. So what you do with Kenny Galladay, you give him help. Now, of course, when we think about help, you think of a complimentary receiver. But a complimentary receiver is not just another guy on the opposite side of him that can put up numbers. This is a guy who can basically hold Kenny Galladay accountable in terms of to raise his game higher, not statistically, but basically mentally. This is where Danny Amendola comes in at, and this is where the person, somebody may say, Danny Amendola is not worth the money that they gave him the extension with for this year. This is why he is worth the extension. What he brings to Kenny Galladay is what another rookie or another veteran can't bring. He brings elevation. The point of them bringing the players in from the New England organization is because they have this work ethic imprint inside of them that if once they next to I want to say someone with IQ or someone with where they would go past the abilities and talent and they can execute that, it would elevate that individual game that much higher. Amendola is going to raise Kenny Galladay's stock up. He challenges Kenny Galladay in a way that, so like for example, if Amendola wasn't here, what Kenny Galladay what he did last year, it will be considered satisfactory for him. You know, in a place that doesn't have really a standard of excellence or to do more or to go past what you have done. You can get comfortable, you can get complacent, and I think that's what happened with Darius Slay. He did some things here, but there's not really much to go off of, for example. So what he did was considered the very best, and there was no other corner or defensive player that was really arguing or that was challenging him to go higher. Not so much in words, but in effort. You know, so going back to Amendola, what he's going to do for Kenny Galladay, he's going to increase him in a mental capacity, challenge him to go get better. You pay $6.5 million for that, plus what he can do on the field, plus what he could do on special teams, plus what he could do in the locker room. You pay him $6.5 million. Give him that money because Kenny Galladay is the investment, and you have to protect or you have to enhance the investment. You have to watch it. You gotta take care of the investment. Kenny Galladay is that guy. He is an anchor. So what you do is go to Ragnow. All right. So they spent 50 million on Big V from Philadelphia. Now watch this. The anchors are like, if I were to say it, repeat it again, you got the first one we was talking about Kenny Galladay. Now we're talking about Frank Ragnow. They have no experience on the big stage. And what I mean by the big stage, you could talk about two. You could talk about the Super Bowl big stage, or you could talk about the moment of truth on the field, like the Kansas City game or the Green Bay game, when it comes down to those pressure moments that this organization is not used to capitalizing on. We're used to faltering and falling over. We need those type of guys that will show them how to handle those situations. So even though he's young, Big V has been in those pressure type situations. When your starting left tackle, your starting right tackle went down, you had to step in, and you on the pathway towards going for a Super Bowl run. You had to fill that in. So you bring that in. Plus he can play guard. So there was a big complaint about not re-signing, Glasgow. Anyway, not resigning him, but he's limited what he can offer Frank Ragnow. Frank Ragnow is your investment. What I mean by that is your anchor. He's the very best at that position. I mean, he's the very best on that line, right? So either you're gonna get players that is at his level or above his level. But these players gonna have to complement him as an anchor. The same thing with Amendola. People say, well, Amendola is old and he's nowhere near as good as Kenny Galladay. He elevates Kenny Galladay. The first thing when he got into camp and he was working, Kenny Galladay saw him work. He said, I'm not going to let Amendola outwork me. He raised him up, and it showed on the field. When his team was losing, Galladay stepped up. Versus if you didn't have nobody to challenge him, the moment that the stage spotlight is on, we as players that we have had, they don't have to rise to the occasion. They falter, they fall back. They're like, well, I'm getting paid, I got the numbers and everything else, but I don't have to rise to the challenge. And that's to turn this organization around to be from a losing organization to a winning organization, or going from not being in the playoffs to be in a playoff run. You need guys that go past themselves or willing to elevate past themselves, and versus being content. And I think the players that they had here, they was considered Pro Bowlers or some kind of statistic or fan favorites, and but yet and still they can get past the level that they were. They was content with going to the Pro Bowl. They was content with far as like with certain amount of touchdowns or certain amount of tackles. They're content, but okay, we left off with Frank Ragnow. So if you got Frank Ragnow, you bring Big V. He may be as a young guy, but look what he was able to do. And people want to go to the X's and O's. So like, okay, if he can pull, if he can block, if he can run block, if he could do all this. I'm not really into that. I'm more so into the psyche of the player and how they elevate what's here, or they're going to be a building block to bring in next. I'm bringing the next player in, to take their position. I'm into the psychological advantages and disadvantages that our players have and don't have. Okay, so Big V is going to uh, elevate Frank Ragnow. So you complement that with we could say Mr. Nasty. What's his name? Sternberg, and you got Joshua Jackson. You bring those two. They both bring an element of winning, or a complementary to Frank Ragnow. Frank Ragnow, since he's been here with the Lions, he don't know anything about winning. I'm sorry. I mean, if people want to go in with that 9-7, going to the playoff and all that, that's considered losing because the atmosphere that was here never rose above. I mean, well, I'm saying like when the spotlight came on to rise in those pressure situations, like in the playoffs with the Seattle Seahawks or Dallas Cowboys, they didn't know how to capitalize on those situations. So if the official comes in with a blown call and they crumble to that versus taking it on and rising above that situation. So this is why I'm going back to the whole Patricia thing. And I think with this video, I'm going to make it a couple parts. And this part will be the first part, and I'm going to close out with this. What Matt Patricia has done, he's brought in guys that will complement his anchors. And I believe I gave four. Let's see, Kenny Galladay, Amendola, no, not Amendola, Kenny Galladay, Frank Ragnow, Jelani Tavai, and I'm missing one. It'll come to me. Trey Flowers. Trey Flowers. You bring in Danny Shelton what he brings to Trey Flowers and what he would bring to the rest of the defensive line. Now, okay, the average fan would say, well, we don't have any names, so we don't have the statistical names, on the defensive line. So they'll say that our defensive line is flat. It is not going to be any good. But just look for example. Okay, let's talk about Trey Flowers, and this is why I will label him as an anchor, and I will close off on Trey Flowers, or I may talk about Jelani Tavai, but I think I'm going to close out with Trey. Trey Flowers, what he was able, okay, when he came into camp, he was hurt, right? Or he had off-season surgery or he had an injury and so forth, and so he didn't come into training camp. He didn't do that, and when he came in, he came in with a label that he only averaged like 7.5 sacks or something like that, not double digits, and it gave him $90 million. I'm going to show you why he was worth $90 million. Like I'm not gonna get down with the X's and O's. That you get somebody else, another guru or somebody like to do that. That's not me. I'm the psychological guy. You pay Trey Flowers this $90 million. All right, so let's say who came out this year that was on the defensive line. You had Reader, whatever how you want it, DJ Reader. I think that's his name. And I was hearing a lot about Chris Jones. I don't think neither one of them wanted to come here, regardless of the reason, whatever, or we couldn't afford, whatever the reason, they wasn't here. And I don't think they would compliment Trey Flowers. And this is the reason why you want somebody to come in that would compliment Trey Flowers. When we played against Green Bay, and he got those two calls on him. He got called the first time, the flag and whatever, and then he did, and then he even lowered his positioning of his hands, and he got called for it again, right? When they interviewed him, how did he handle the situation? Did he blow up, or did he basically say, let's get back to work? He was heated, nonetheless, but he took it in, and that shows what? That constraint. So you put him in a pressure situation on the stage with something that he can control, he will handle it. Now, here's the reason why I'm going to put emphasis on why I would give him the money and why he was not giving the money, why he was worth the money. When he was injured, he came in off injury, not fully healthy. And look what he was able to do, not healthy. And people say, like, well, he didn't do much. By himself on a depleted defensive line. No Daniels, no Hand, no Snack Harris. Pretty much the ones that we was banking on to complement Trey Flower, none of them was there. So by himself and possibly getting double teamed and so forth, he was able to generate what? Close to 6 sacks. And this is still not being fully healthy. So what that tells me is that what's inside of him goes past the ability of talent. That's power, that's will, and that's what you need on your anchor. Now, of all the Lions' history of me watching, let's say from the '90s on up, I've never seen a guy on the defensive line like Trey Flowers. I've seen a passionate guy in a linebacker core in Chris Spillman. And even Jerry Ball was decent. We brought in the Tracy Stroggins and even when you go down the line from that, you got the Robert Prochet, the Luther Ellis's, Then you got the Sean Rogers, you got the Cliff Avrils, and even when they brought in Kalimba Edwards, and remember they had that. I don't know if I'm going back, and they had the high draft pick, and they traded the draft pick to New Orleans to get Pat Swilling because Pat Swilling had a breakout year in New Orleans, and they traded their first round pick, I believe, to New Orleans to get Pat Swilling. And Pat Swilling didn't live up to what he did in New Orleans because he had a linebacker core that was running a 3-4, I believe, and he had a linebacker core that was just lights out. I think Sam Mills was there, Ricky Jackson, and I'm missing someone else that was part of that 3-4. I mean the four linebackers, and it was just awesome. But anyway, but when he got to Detroit, he didn't duplicate because he didn't have the complementary pieces to do what he did in New Orleans. So this is why I say why Trey Flowers is worth the money, because in year two, you saw what he did in year one, halfway in, not mentally halfway plugged in, not mentally halfway checked out. I don't want to be here. I hate it here. He was halfway. It's like It doesn't matter what the job is. I'm going to get it done. Look at the guy that you brought in Danny Shelton. His same type of guy. And you got him next to Trey Flowers, that same type of mentality. That elevates each other. Boom. That triples down the rest of the defensive line. How the contagious act works psychologically. If the ball is rolling, somebody may not. You need to get the person going to get the hands dirty to get the ball started. But once that ball starts rolling, it becomes contagious. This is how you get the Legion of Boom and so forth, and get all them the great defenses. It started with one player getting it in, getting their hands dirty and building it, and then they complement that with another player or another two players, and next they build something. They're like, yeah, we have an identity, it's growing, and then the other parts of the defense were like, I want to party, I want to get in, and even with the players that you draft or the players that you bring in free agency, they all want a part of it because it's building. If somebody want a closer look what the going to work crew with the Pistons back in, what was that, 04, that run from, I want to say 01, all the way up into maybe 09. They was arguably like the best team in the East. Arguably. But once they started off with, when you had Jerry Stackhouse, Ben Wallace, Corliss Williamson, Dana Barrows, Chucky Atkins, even Damon Jones was on the bench during that year, and Cliff Robinson, Michael Curry, and stuff like that. Zeliko Rabacha. You had basically what is this? But they develop an identity based off of Ben Wallace, his hard work. Then the next person bought into that. The next person bought into that. Cliff Robinson wasn't really Rasheed Wallace, but he was like a low budget Rasheed Wallace. He played defense. He could shoot the three, and he'd score you some basket, right? So he wasn't Rasheed Wallace, but he was something that you could build with to complement Stackhouse on offense as well as complement Ben Wallace on defense. Look at what the Lions is doing. If you got Trey Flowers, you complement that with Danny Shelton, and then you back that up in the next ranking back or the next position back with the linebacker core, you go get Jamie Collins. Now, like I said, the anchor was Jelani Tavai. He's your anchor. So what I mean by anchor, he's your building block. So you don't want him surrounded with players that can't elevate him. He's already the best linebacker core before we got Jamie Collins. So you want a player that's going to elevate him higher. Trey Flowers is already the best defensive lineman that we had. So you want a player that's going to elevate him next to him, right? So I say the same thing with Kenny Golladay with Amendola. You want Marvin Jones is nice. I mean, he's okay. He's like Alvin. He's like John Taylor to Jerry Rice. I mean, John Taylor was a Pro Bowler. Back when Pro Bowls was really worth something. But he still wasn't Jerry Rice. I don't know if he was a Hall of Famer. I'm not sure John Taylor was a Hall of Famer, but he could have been. Anyway, Jerry Rice was Jerry Rice. Kenny Galladay is Kenny Galladay. Marvin Jones is a complimentary piece, like Alvin Harper was to Michael Irvin. Anyway, I'm gonna bring this video to a close. This is I'm not a Lions fan, but I am a guy who understands football and understands the psychological how winning franchises are built. And one thing people try to do like with one franchise to another in comparison, they try to, well, this organization brought in this whatever, but every organization from top to bottom is not built the same. You can go into a situation and you inherit a team that has an excellent quarterback and then maybe an excellent offensive structure, but the financial situation is horrific. So you can't add to that. You're stuck with what you have. And you may be in a position where you don't have any draft picks and so forth. And every situation is different or differs from one to the other. So the first thing people would like to do in comparison to Matt Patricia, they would try to compare him to another first-time head coach that came and hit the ball rolling. But look about what Matt Patricia came to. He's willing to tack on a losing situation. I give that 100% props, but he's not taking it on in sense of arrogance. He has a chip on his shoulder, and he demands for his vision to be sought out. Is that any different than Bill Belichick? Is there any no, not Bill Belichick? Is there any different from Jimmy Johnson? When Jimmy Johnson came from Miami to Dallas Cowboy, he basically changed the structure of how it was built upon a Tom Landry. He changed it, and actually his team became nasty. And of course, he didn't win it in '95, but that was his team that won it in '95. He won it in '92 and '93. He lost to they lost to the 49ers up under that was Bill Switzer first year with the Cowboys, and he lost to the 49ers. Of course, 49ers had just got Deion Sanders that 1 year, and then the next year Bill Switzer won it, but that was still the Emmitt Smith, the Troy Aikmans, not Troy Aikman. Troy Aikman was there when he got there. The Emmitt Smith, the Jay Novacek, the Michael Irvin, that was all his. Troy Aikman was garbage. Before he was the first round pick. He was garbage. I think he was. Did he come in the same year that Barry Sanders came in '89? I think he did. Anyway, he was garbage until Jimmy Johnson got a hold of him. He was garbage. And the same thing with Stafford. Stafford was okay. Like, okay, Jim Caldwell put an implement in, everybody that was worked with Stafford put added on to or helping out the development of Stafford. But no one really challenged Patricia, because Patricia let Stafford be Stafford in a way, but he gave him like this expectation though. Every coach that came here up under Stafford's a guy because he's not just a coachable guy. He is a guy that will do what you ask him to do, and he could do it. Stafford is great. He is great. This is why Wayne Fonts went ahead and said like he wish he had him, because what Stafford can do well is on the field. What he does off the field, he's like plugged in. He bought in. So I say that to say what Patricia brings to the Lions organization is that he's not afraid of the spotlight. And one of the things that he did that to this day it put a smile on my face when he had one interview with the local media, and I guess someone wasn't properly or properly sitting in a respectful way of treating the interview like it was of value or significance or something, instead of versus a waste of time. And that's how the media is here. The culture is used to losing. I mean, it is a losing culture here. So the media adapt to that losing culture. So they don't treat it as it being respectful or respectfully. They treat it like it's an afterthought. Like, if I could be somewhere else, I would be. So Patricia came in and said like, hey, sit up, have some respect for the process. And people call that like, oh, he's trying to change everything. Yeah, he's actually trying to change the mediocrity and like the level of approach. And people think that you immediately demonstrate that on the field. It doesn't work. It's psychological. If you have an atmosphere that is okay with being 9-7, you're on a cusp for a wild card or a cusp for this, but you don't have to beat anybody. As long as you just be the talk that you could be a playoff possible team, or your coach has a winning record, above 500 record, and players can buy into that. If that's the highest that the coach can go, if that's the ceiling of the coach, the players only going to go up to the level of that ceiling. But when Patricia came here, he in New England winning the division, it's not even a thought. It's a requirement. It's a requirement. So their standard is there's only one winner at the end of the year, and that's the Super Bowl champ, right? So he came in and immediately people may say like how he did it was really disrespectful, or he tore down a winning regime. If you're 9-7, but you can't beat anybody that's legitimate, how are you a winning organization? I'm not just talking about 1 year. I'm talking about this has been the duration since he was here. The previous regime. And so then the players, then some of the fans may say, well, Patricia have never beat anybody. Patricia, look at it this way. Look at it like this. The reason why you lose the Green Bay game, the reason why you lose the Cardinals game, the reason why you lose the Chiefs games, because the players wasn't ready for that stage. A person could say like, well, it's about the coaching. You got to change up the system. You got to do this. If I put the game plan on there, I'm telling you this game plan is going to win. This game plan is going to be successful, right? This do it is going to be successful. But if the players don't want to do it that way, because they don't believe, not in the coach, they don't believe that they think they know better than what the system is going to implement, then how can it succeed? How is impossible. So you have to get guys that see what you see and they can implement that on the field. Trey Flowers, Jelani Tavai, Kenny Galladay, Frank Ragnow, and I want to give one more, and I may go back in the secondary. I may say Tracy Walker. I'm leaning towards Tracy Walker as like the fourth guy. Let me see. Trey, Kenny, Ragnow, Tavai. He may be the fifth guy. And what you did with Tracy, look what you brought around Tracy. And people say like an anchor could be a 1 year player, whatever. Yeah, if whoever sees the vision and that can execute that on the field becomes your anchor. And they hit the ball, they hit the ground running, they gone. Trey Flower did that soon he hit the field, and he was halfway healthy with no, off-season workouts and nothing like that, because he was rehab for his off-season, I believe, surgery. But soon he got on the field. Look what he was able to do, and with depleted, with no help, no Ashawn Robinson, no Snacks, no Daniels, no Hand, all the ones that we would consider we was banking on to make this defensive line legit. Trey Flowers did it by himself, even getting double teamed. So just imagine if he's healthy. I don't want to play the if game, about, or even going by what they did. I rather look to the future. I kind of look at it as my optimism is based upon what's not yet seen versus going by what was done. What was done is last year. I care less about it. If you listen to any great musician or any great producer of anything, they really don't listen to the old stuff as like inspiration. They think they could do better, so they elevate themselves. They go past themselves, and they challenge themselves to go higher. So I think Trey Flowers, what he did last year was nothing. But look what he was able to do from a mental standpoint. And you compliment that. This is why I say this team is going to be 11-5, and they will get a playoff win. I don't care too much about the winning the division. My Achilles heel was winning in Lambeau, and they did that. They did it already. So uh, winning the division is, that's a thing. But give me a playoff win, and I'm going to go ahead and claim it. Playoff win and getting the ball rolling, hitting the ground running, and everything. And people talk about the run game. They talk about this or talk about that. All you just need is one person get their hand dirty, get their hands dirty, and it will be a domino effect. It's contagious. Look at our secondary. I'm going to talk about Tracy Walker real quick, and I think the next video I may talk about Jelani Tavai and put a little bit more emphasis on Patricia. But Tracy Walker, you surrounded him like he came in as I think he was a rookie last year, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't the year before. I'm not sure. But anyway, look what he was able to do when he had to fill in when Darius Slade was basically nursing a hamstring, or um, who was the other cornerback? They let go this year. Who came from Oakland? I can't think of his name. They brought him in. Even let's see, when your safeties, Diggs, which I think is overrated, very overrated. He is he's a spot guy. If you put him in a good spot and you surround everybody else is doing their job, he can do great. But he's average to me. But anyway, I'm not there to knock him down. But I'm just saying, from all the hype that they got once they traded him, it was like the whole team went down. Like no, he has a peaked ceiling. He only can go so high. But Tracy Walker, we haven't even he he sort of reminds me of Merton Hanks. I don't know why, but he reminds me of Merton Hanks of the '94 49ers, who was of course a Pro Bowler. He reminded me of that, where Merton Hanks started off as a corner, but they moved him to free safety, and he just took off. So, but Tracy Walker, you surround him with Harmon. You surround that with two new corners. Okuda, which is going to be a stud, and I'm going to say something brief about why he is, or in a way that they can use him to be a stud. Um, and then you got Desmond Trufant, and then of course last year 5th round pick you have Amari Oruwariye, and he has something to prove for himself. But like I said, once again, you if you bring in players that's going to not challenge the person's integrity or their manhood or try to take their spot, but elevate their game to make them want to go higher in themselves. And this is why you bring Harmon. Harmon is a gamer. Look, Trey Flowers is a gamer. Harmon is a gamer. Amendola is a gamer. Shelton is a gamer. Jamie Collins is a gamer. Look what you brought to this franchise. And people immediately think about the names, but if you got all those names if I got all the players that I wanted this year, the Cronklins, the Chris Jones, the Thomas Jones, I think it was Thomas, not Thomas Jones, the cornerback Byron Jones. I'm sorry, Byron Jones, and a few other pieces that I wanted, even the Littleton and so forth. If I got what I wanted, they couldn't give the Lions organization that what we have always needed. When the stage is lit and it's time to rise to that spotlight, that we have the players that will get us over the hump versus like, wow, why is everybody looking at me like I'm supposed to do it? You have the guys that can get you to the hump, and then you have the guys that can get you over the hump. They brought in the guys that can get you over the hump. We got up on a Cartwheel, up on a Swartz, we got to the hump, but we couldn't get over it. In the midst of having we having Sue Fairley, Cliff Averill, or even Van der Bosch and all that. We had, all that defense that was considered good. I think it was 2014. That was a good defense, but we couldn't get over the hump. So when we played the Dallas Cowboys, you saw Sue at the press conference. He was crying, maybe because he was leaving or because they was right there, and of course, they got cheated with the Pettigrew thing. But anyway, they couldn't get over the hump. So you need guys that have been there and done it and know how to get over the hump. If you bring in one guy that know how to do that, having them taking on a 50 something or 60 something man locker room, and that's impossible. That's impossible for one guy. So if you bring in maybe 10 of those guys that know how to get over the hump, you're gonna change the franchise. And this is why I think Patricia's the guy. I don't know if Quinn is looking out for Patricia. Patricia will get you there to the hump. He needs the players to get you over the hump, and that's where Bob Quinn came in and got you the guys that would get you over the hump. He may not have got or may didn't get the guys that you want, but he got the guys that would get you over the hump. But at the same time, those same guys that get you over are the guys that are going to support and elevate your anchors. So if they're not there, the anchors can still keep it afloat, and you could bring in your drafts, whatever, and your whatever to complement that. So with that being said, we'll bring this video to a close.